Our local Sunshine Coast real estate market is chillier than the December weather. In my December market report, I'll tell you 3 things you need to do if you're serious about selling your home this month.
The temperatures weren't the only thing that got cold in November and December. The market also cooled. Tony, there's not a lot of new listings coming on the market. Does it make sense to sell a home in December right now?
It depends on your situation. I think if you have to sell between now and next spring because you're relocating for work, or you've got an investment property and you can't afford the payments with the interest rates going up, that kind of stuff, rather than waiting till spring. If it was me, I'd list it sooner rather than later. There are expected to be additional interest rates increases between now and spring, summer next year. And so have we hit bottom as far as the market here goes? I don't think so. So I would say yes, it makes sense to sell your house. If you need to sell your house, if you're just putting it up for the sake of seeing what it's worth, then probably not at this time.
My interpretation of that is a potential seller has to do the math, whether they want to sell now in a slower market or wait till spring when things pick up. But in that time, you're saying the market might have fallen between now and the busier market. So it's kind of could be a wash.
Yeah,
really.
So looking at it from a buyer's perspective. So if you're a buyer and you're qualified for X amount of an interest rate, but prices are a little bit higher now than they will be in spring, you have to do the math to see, well, is it worth paying a little bit more at a lower interest rate because the total amount of expense that I'm going to have over the duration of a 5-year mortgage or whatever your term is going to outweigh the savings of maybe 5 to 10% that you might see in the purchase price of the product at a higher interest rate. And most of the equations I've seen in that regard have resulted in it's better to buy now than it is later. Plus, when you sell a house and buy somewhere, if you've sold in another market, you're buying into this market, there isn't really too much you can do.
If somebody had to sell in December, what's your advice to them?
Get your listing as much exposure as possible, which is going to mean making sure that you get professional photos done, you get a professional video done, you highlight the location, you share that in not only the local market, but the greater Vancouver market, provincially, nationally, and in some cases we are seeing quite a lot of buyers that aren't necessarily from the immediate area looking over here. We have shifted back to primarily a retiree buyer group. Could that change back again? Yes, but that's kind of the market that's the primary driver right now on the Sunshine Coast, and has been historically, other than that little blip we got with COVID. The most important thing is to get as much exposure as you can for the property, and then also price it appropriately. People that are selling now, even though it's taken a bit longer, more days on market, are the ones that are getting ahead of the adjustment. The properties that are sitting for prolonged periods of time are sellers that are stuck on what their place might have been worth 6 months ago and don't want to give up what they perceive as equity that they've built, even though right now the market is saying you need to price it sharply to get interest. If you do price it appropriately, in the last couple of months I've had 3, I think, multiple offers where property had sat on the market. Eventually the sellers got some action, or we redid the promos, or did some more marketing for it. The price was adjusted. It was then priced appropriately. We had multiple buyers, and they ended up getting substantially over asking price. So that still works. The key is exposure and an appropriate list price.
What's your advice to sellers that maybe get an offer right now, but if they can see it as a lowball offer, do they just flat out reject it? Do they work the offer? What's your advice in this?
Depends on the list price. Like, I think if you're working with a local agent listing your home that is quite active, so one of probably the top 20 or 30 realtors on the Sunshine Coast, you want to listen to what they have to say as far as pricing. Or before you get a listing, get 2 or 3 realtors to give you a competitive market analysis, and then talk about the marketing and stuff they do. Then decide on what realtor you think is qualified and that you trust. Once you trust that realtor, listen to their advice on price. And if their advice on price is that the property that you're selling is priced appropriately and you get a lowball offer, then maybe don't negotiate as much as you would if you're $150,000 above the initial list price recommendation that the agent gave you, and someone comes in right around that original list price recommendation. Odds are, providing that you've had the exposure and the time on the market, that is an appropriate offer price. And so in that case, yes, I would negotiate with that. So there is nuance in each individual listing, but in general, it's much more of a buyer's market than it has been in the last couple of years. And so if you want to sell, you're going to have to negotiate with a potential buyer, allow them to have subjects, all the things that that are required in a more civilized market.
Tony, what do you have for commercial listings coming on here this month in December?
Crikey, what don't I have? I've got, obviously, the pick of the month has got to be Sluggers, Jim. We've had Mel Dempster on here. I think he's coming out in a week. We'll have a great interview with him, and he talks about, just what a wonderful lifestyle owning a business on the Sunshine Coast, specifically, a gym or a fitness facility gives you, and how it really fulfills him to be able to facilitate people living their best life, whether, through nutrition and through exercise. So obviously that's a highlight, that listing. And I mean, it's really a piece of history on the coast if you were to step up and make an offer on that and just keep that community dream alive. I obviously have other outdoorsy type listings. I mean, we've got Alpha Adventures that's been on the market for a little while now, and it'd be really exciting to get an offer on that and see a new operator, maybe a new younger family or whatever coming over and picking up that one. We have a really good location up in Seashelt right now, sticking with the commercial, which is Jam Jar's Seashelt location. Those guys are pulling back a little bit and heading back into the city, but they've got a really nice established Lebanese kind of grocery store catering company up there, and that's prime for someone that wants to come in and put their own kind of take on it. And obviously here again in Gibsons, we've got the Smoke on the Water barbecue shack. If you've ever been down there, it's stuff melt in your mouth, and anyone that's any sort of foodie or interested in in again putting their own spin on that one, that would be something that I'd check out too. So they're the ones that are the highlights for this month.
This is a really good time of year to buy a business, I think, because so much of what happens on the coast is based on like tourism. So specifically Alpha Adventures and Smoke on the Water. That's going to be like bonkers, I'm going to guess, in the spring. So now if you came in now, you've got a few months to kind of get your legs under you and figure out the lay of the land and understand how the business works.
Absolutely. Like a lot of times we've talked about this in the past, people see businesses for sale, at certain times a year or whatever, and they'll say, oh, what a shame they're going out of business just before Christmas, right? Like if it's a restaurant or whatever, or just after Christmas, or, first 2 months in the new year, this place is going out of business. Just because a restaurant or a business is for sale, it isn't a bad news story. What it means is that owner-operator has decided that, they've built it up as much as they want to. They've got what they want out of it. It's ready for some fresh eyes, for some fresh energy, and it's a great opportunity, and it's typically a really good story. Like we've had a lot of commercial sales recently, which have been good news for the sellers, good news for the buyers, and good news for the community. So I think that that's really key. Like you said, is the timing on when you list a business, and what you're looking for as far as initially getting set up, and the training. Like always, training's involved. The seller is always going to train the buyer. So it is really important what time of year you sell the business. And like you say, now is a perfect time to check out some businesses and get them ready for the tourist season starting up.
Something that's not on our outline for the podcast this month, Tony, is David Eby that we talked about last month.
Is he the same as Ebby?
I think it's the same guy.
And Eby?
I think it's
Eby.
the same guy, yeah.
Eby and Ebby.
Just this morning before we started recording, there was a release from the government.
But I heard he's got his own podcast. It's called Ebby and Flowy. His mate Flowy's on it with him, talking about housing and stuff.
Just this morning, the province put out a release about what we talked about last month with Premier Eby. They've already taken steps on that housing plan. The first one is they are removing strata rental restrictions. So that's going to happen, I think, just about as soon as they can pass the legislation. The next one is ending age restrictions for stratas. 55 plus will stay, but that's the only age restriction. And they're laying the groundwork to work with municipalities. So it's all happening. You were smart. You were right.
The rental restrictions, I think, will have an immediate impact. The purpose of that is to open up vacant units for rentals for people, to give more options for housing or rental homes and that kind of stuff. And then the age restriction being removed means that families can live in a larger proportion of the stratas that are available out there.
That's right.
Is there any, is there an amount of units that they think this is going to become available? Did you see anything?
No, not that I've read, just that there should be a near immediate increase in units that will be available.
to me, that will have an immediate effect on maybe not necessarily property values, but definitely on the strain that's on renters at the moment, and it should free up a lot more units. And then combine that with the likely selling of Airbnbs due to zoning changes on the Sunshine Coast, I'd say that hopefully you'll see some immediate relief in the first quarter for rentals on the Sunshine Coast, which I think will have a trickle down effect as far as accommodation available for potential workers, and then hopefully we'll see less of a staff shortage moving into the tourist season, which is probably the main economic driver of the Sunshine Coast. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. While you're here, maybe you want to check out one of my listings or watch my video about why you should choose me to sell your home.